These souls are coming in remembering more of their true essence. They're coming in already connected to, let's call them their junk strands of DNA. These babies coming in are coming in with their light bodies already formed. They're already moving into crystalline base. Whereas for us, who have been on the planet a lot longer, we usually have a catalyst that acts as a portal to our awakening.
I'm here today with Belle Tozer, who is a global traveler, surfer, writer, wild woman, spirit baby, intuitive, entrepreneur, and ultimate storyteller. She has an incredible story of communicating with her baby before he was born, and I'm really looking forward to diving into this and learning about your journey today. So thank you for joining me, Belle.
Well, thank you for having me. I could talk about this topic all day long. So to find an audience who wants to listen is very exciting for me.
Wonderful. Well, I certainly am that audience. As I was telling you, I have pre-birth memories myself, and this is a huge interest of mine, connecting with people who have had pre-birth memories or pre-birth communications with their children. And so I guess let's just start by getting a little bit of backstory on your journey. So were you raised religious, spiritual, or what was your spiritual background like?
Oh, I was definitely not raised religious or spiritual for that fact. I grew up in outback South Australia in a tiny little Dust Bowl town in the middle of nowhere, population 150 people. I went to a rural school. We lived on land. We, milked our own cows. We planted our own veggies. We didn't even have hot running water. And I know that that sounds crazy for someone. I'm only 45 years old, but we lived a very simple, basic life. But I came in with this, I want to call it a wanderlust. I had this absolute thirst to travel. And I always used to tell my family, there were 6 siblings in my family and my mum and dad. And I always used to say, I'm going to travel the world and I'm going to see everywhere and I'm going to do everything. And I came from a long family of having never gone anywhere, never done anything. I don't have any uncles or aunties, parents, grandparents, nobody traveled. But I had this wanderlust that I came in with as a child that I wanted to explore and travel. So as soon as I was old enough, I left and I traveled overseas and I spent 10 years straight just traveling the globe and having extraordinary experiences. And I guess you could say I was living an influencer lifestyle long before it was trendy. I always found a way to work a little bit, make a little bit of money, and then go off overseas again. So I guess the answer to your question is just born with a natural curiosity for life.
I love that. So where did your journey with your son begin?
Well, that began, it was 2011, and my husband and I, we'd spent the season snowboarding in Vail, Colorado. We're Australian. And we had spent the whole season snowboarding. We bought a van and we drove from California all the way to Panama, surfing the whole Pacific coast of Central America. And that's when the idea came in. We'd been together for 5 years. We started talking about having a baby. So, we started the process of trying to get pregnant, and obviously nothing was happening month after month after month. And then we were in Indonesia surfing on a very remote island. And I had a very, I guess you could call it a psychedelic experience where a tree communicated with me. And this tree shared with me that if I didn't change the direction of my life, that something drastic was going to happen. And I didn't really understand the message at the time, but I guess I was living in a way that wasn't serving me anymore, working in an environment that wasn't serving me, and I wasn't able to change. So I just went along the process of trying to get pregnant, and it didn't happen month after month. And then I went to bed thinking and feeling one way my entire life on August the 7th, 2013. And when I woke up on August the 8th, that version of my reality was gone. It was completely ripped out from underneath me. And what followed was a very confronting and, let's say, powerful Kundalini experience. which went on for many years as I was trying to get pregnant with my son. And in that process of trying to get pregnant and having this awakening journey, my son and my daughter started coming to me in my dreams and sending me synchronistic messages and signs. And I began wondering if the universe had something in store for me other than an ordinary conception journey.
That's fascinating. Are you able to share what some of those messages were that you got from your son? And did you say your daughter also?
Well, actually, funnily enough, it was my daughter who communicated with me for 8 whole years prior to conceiving my son. And my son didn't come forth for conception until the last minute. And it would take many, many years for me to learn the reason why my daughter didn't come through. It was a reason I only learned just recently, but that's probably a whole nother side subject to this. But basically, it was my daughter that was communicating first, and she would come through with messages. So she told me that she wanted her name to be Willow. And then I'd be like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then the next day, a friend would phone me up and say, oh, hey, do you want to try out this new restaurant? It's called Willow. And I was like, okay, that's like a little bit weird. And I started thinking, I don't know, am I imagining this? And I told a few people about it, and they just told me I was crazy. So it started off like that, just little drops of information, just little messages. And then she showed me that her totem was a dragonfly. And I started seeing dragonflies everywhere, which if you look at the spiritual meaning of dragonflies, it's about transformation. So I started seeing dragonflies everywhere. And then I was again in Indonesia, and it was, before we all had, Netflix and whatever. Really, we were traveling with Netflix on our computer, and someone lent me a hard drive with some movies on it. There was one movie that stood out, and it was called Dragonfly. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll watch this movie. And if anyone hasn't seen it, it's a Kevin Costner movie. And his wife is working somewhere in the jungle, and she gets killed in a bus crash. She was 5 months pregnant at the time. She dies in a bus crash. But Kevin Costner starts having all these dreams where this dragonfly is coming to him, and this dragonfly. And anyway, long story short, he can't let it go. He ends up going to the Congo or wherever it was that she had the accident. And it turns out that she survived the accident, and she was taken into the jungle by these locals, and she gave birth to a little girl that they called Dragonfly in the movie, right? So all of these crazy synchronicities, and they just got more and more powerful and more. And I started thinking, I'm not crazy. This is definitely something. My baby is communicating with me. And once I really leaned into that knowing, it was like a freight train of information came forth.
That's incredible. I remember in a previous interview, you talked about how you were doing a lot of things to try to conceive a child, and none of it was working. And then your child communicated with you about, I'll let you tell what the communication was. Because I thought that part was fascinating.
By this point, I had been trying to conceive for 8 years. I had really moved along the journey, and I was really trusting the spirit and the guide. But, all the synchronistic dreams, all the messages, I had done everything that was asked of me. I was eating organic food. I had worked on my mother wound, my father wound. I had really peeled back the layers of the onion. I had done all the doing, and I'd had acupuncture treatments, and I'd gone to this therapy and that therapy, and none of it was working, and I still wasn't pregnant. And the one thing that I hadn't done was IVF, because I was really against IVF. I had a lot of dogma around that journey, and I had chosen to believe the stories that other women had shared about their IVF journey and their IVF experience. And this was actually the very first time. I always knew my son was there, but he was further back. And my son came to me in a dream when I was 8 years into the journey, and he said, "You weren't ready to hear it before now, but I want to be conceived with IVF." And I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. And I was like, I definitely wasn't ready to hear it before now. And I had to really delve into the dogma and the stories that I was carrying around IVF and go, okay, well, if he wants to be conceived via IVF, and it's a very strong, clear message, if I'm really allowing for a spirit-led conception, then I must go on this journey of IVF. And I decided very early on that if I was going to do IVF, I was going to do it my way. I wasn't going to believe the stories of other women I had heard talking about IVF. If I was going to do IVF, I wanted to invite the medicine in with love and magic. I wanted to call forth the most adventurous eggs. I wanted to direct my endocrine system to really nurture and nourish those eggs that were coming forth. And I wanted to kiss the medication and hold it to my heart and say, thank you so much for bringing my baby to me. And so that's what I did. I went on the journey of really uniting magic and science and bringing them together for a very conscious, expanded conception journey.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure there's probably a lot of people who may feel the way that you felt in the beginning about IVF.
Yeah, it's one of those things where a lot of women feel that their body has either failed them or they feel, and a story that I had was, babies that come through IVF, they're not as conscious, they're not as expanded, and all these stories that go around in the new age community, and really the conscious community, that IVF is less than. But my experience in communicating with spirit babies is that they're choosing to be born in this way. They're choosing this journey, and they've got a myriad of reasons for why that might be. And so when I went on the IVF journey, and the universe literally rolled out a magic red carpet for that cycle, it was so expanded and so amazing and so everything that you can imagine my surprise after the first cycle. I didn't get any fertilized eggs at all. And I was like so shocked. I was like, F you, baby. How dare you send me on this journey? You give me all these signs. Oh, I was so mad. And I think that the reason that happened was because I would have been missing a very crucial layer of the journey. If I had conceived the very first time I tried with IVF, I wouldn't have understood the absolute grief and devastation that can occur when an IVF cycle doesn't work. You've invested so much time, so much money, you've put your body through all of these medicines, and then you still don't get pregnant. It is absolutely earth shattering. And just to think about it now, it just brings so much emotion for me, because it's truly earth shattering. And if you haven't been through it, you can't possibly know how earth shattering that journey is, because you so deeply want this baby. And I've heard women say, oh, IVF is the easy way. I'm like, no, having a margarita on the beach and having sex is the easy way. Having to go through IVF is very far from easy. So then fast forward to my second cycle. And before my second cycle, I had a dream. It was a very, very powerful dream. And I was in my ovaries, and my son was holding my hand in the dream. And all of these eggs were swaying around inside of my ovaries. And my son yelled out, "Who wants to be me?" And all of the eggs parted way, and this one golden egg just rose up from all the other eggs, and it was shining, and all of the other eggs were like bowing to this one egg. And this beautiful goddess came over, and she picked up the golden egg and she put it in a beautiful glass box, and all of the eggs parted, and there was this magic carpet, and the beautiful goddess walked down the magic carpet holding the golden egg, and she handed it to my son. And he looked at me with such pride, and he said, "Mama, this is going to be me." And then fast forward to my next IVF cycle, I only got one egg. And the clinic was so negative, because I was 41 years old, and they were like, "Oh, you've only got one egg. Don't pin all your hopes on this one egg." But I knew it wasn't any old egg. I knew it was my golden egg. And the night before I was having the embryo put in, my son came to me in a dream again, and he showed me his whole life, what he was coming to Earth to do. He was here to usher in a new paradigm of technology, and the kind of technology he was going to make was quantum technology that was going to heal the Earth and the people. And we had this very deep, highly conscious, expanded conversation while he was in spirit form. And just before he left, I said, hang on, what do you want your name to be? And he said, I trust you, Mama. I just want something classy and I want something stylish. He said. And the next day I had the embryo put in and my husband was there holding my hand. We locked eyes. And as soon as the embryo was in, I knew instantaneously that I was pregnant and I knew that I would give birth to this boy. And it was an all so powerful knowing. And that's the power of spirit baby communication. There's nothing anyone can say or do that can sway you from this knowing that is all encompassing in every cell of your body.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Such a sacred experience. I feel blessed to have been able to hear your story. There's another thing that I remember you sharing, and that's that your son had told you that you would have to up-level your consciousness?
Yes. Yes, my son, and look, I don't know how quantum or how expanded your listeners are, but the babies that I communicate come from other dimensions and other frequencies. We're currently in the 3D reality, moving into 4D and into 5D as unity consciousness, heart-centered consciousness. And the babies that I'm communicating with, I've communicated with babies all the way up to the 26th dimension coming to Earth. They are very expanded. They are very conscious. And, if you're listening to this and it resonates, if it's speaking to you, if you're trying to get pregnant, if you're trying to have a baby, then consider yourself informed that you are bringing through one of these expanded and conscious beings. So, the journey to conceive, if you're struggling to conceive, if conception is not coming easy for you, then there's a reason for that. And in my experience, it's because you're being prepared energetically, emotionally, physically, and through consciousness expansion to hold the frequency of this baby. So I knew that my son was expanded. I knew that he was very conscious. I had trouble sleeping the whole entire pregnancy, just having his energy inside of me. And he had told me that there was a big shift coming for me. And whilst I was in labor, I had planned a home birth for my son. There was nothing that was going to get me to go to the hospital. I didn't even have a hospital bag packed. And I had what Western medicine will call a stroke in labor that blinded me as I was giving birth to my son. And we called the midwife. I couldn't see. I was in labor. And the midwife said that she didn't have the skills or experience to support me because I couldn't see and that we needed to go to the hospital. I didn't want to go, but my midwife actually sat me down and she put her hand on my shoulder and she said, "You are a strong and powerful woman and you can birth this baby. It doesn't matter where you are." So I really had to surrender in that moment. The last thing I wanted was to be in hospital to birth a baby. This is my choice. If you feel safe in the hospital, that's your choice. There's no judgment on whatever your choice is, but that was mine. And I went to the hospital and I birthed my baby blind with powerful primal intuition that I didn't know existed. And I was blind for 4 months post the birth of my son. And once my sight restored, it restored in a level I never knew existed. I was able to see the ley lines of the earth, auras very clearly, the quantum codes, the light codes that are coming in. My vision expanded in a way that I didn't know was possible.
That's amazing. So you communicate with spirit babies now? That's part
Yes.
of what you do? Do you find that most of the babies coming in now are from higher dimensions?
Most of the babies coming in from high dimensions, no and yes. The people that I communicate with that come to me for a session, they're always bringing in babies of a higher consciousness. If you find me online or you listen to my podcast and you resonate, then you're absolutely bringing in a baby of a higher consciousness. You won't resonate with me. You won't find my website. You won't find anything about me if what I have to share isn't for you. So there is a difference between a spirit baby and a starseed coming in from a higher consciousness. So everyone that wants a baby has a spirit baby. They have a baby in spirit that's waiting, but potentially that baby is at the level of 3D or 4D or 5D or 6D. But the babies that are quantum and expanded, they are way, way, way beyond that. So everyone has a spirit baby, but not everyone has a starseed that's coming to Earth. And there is no right, there is no wrong. But if you get pregnant very, very easily out drinking margaritas on the beach and you're not even trying, or you're heroin addict, best friend or mother, whatever, has a baby easily, they're just not bringing through the same kind of soul. Doesn't make you any better than them. It just means that you're bringing through a different level of consciousness soul.
Yeah, it's really interesting because when I have 3 children, they're a little bit older now, 12, 10, and 8, but I was very unconscious when I had my first child, and I had to start waking up really quickly, and I still feel like they are leaps and bounds ahead of me without any guidance to get there. I feel like they just came in that way, and they've been teachers for me. Like, they've triggered my spiritual awakening. So it's just really interesting to hear that I'm not alone in this, and this is something that's happening around the world.
Oh, you're definitely not alone. In some cases, the parent, you could have a really quantum baby, a really expanded consciousness soul coming into, let's say, a heroin addict that's totally asleep, that will cause a catalyst for a massive spiritual awakening. That can absolutely happen and does happen. And you can think you're very conscious and you can think you're awake and aware. I thought I was conscious back then, but really I was still very asleep. The evolution that I've been on in the last 4 years with my son, these souls coming in are coming in remembering more of their true essence. They're coming in already connected to, let's call them their junk strands of DNA, right? So we've got 2 strands of DNA, 10 junk strands. These babies coming in are coming in with activated junk strands. They're coming in with their light bodies already formed. They're already moving into crystalline base. Whereas for us, who have been on the planet a lot longer, we usually have a catalyst that acts as a portal to our awakening. In my case, it was, a sudden overnight Kundalini awakening. Your case, it was parenting. For a lot of people, it was 2020 and COVID acted as their catalyst. So there's a catalyst for us, but these babies, they don't need a catalyst. They are the catalyst that's bringing about a great wave of awakening on the earth, which we call it a collective awakening, but what it actually is each one of us is individually awakening on our own journeys in our own right, which is what's creating the collective great awakening.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I definitely had a catalyst in my life to awaken me, and it's been an ongoing process. But what you're saying is that some souls are coming in now already at the level that we would call awakened.
Absolutely. They're coming in awake. Like, we've all met 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds that come out with these one-liners and you're like, oh my goodness me. And that's only going to speed up as more and more conscious souls come to the planet, more and more volunteers, let's say, come to shift the frequency on Earth. Our consciousness is going to expand at rates we've never, ever seen before on the planet. And what we're seeing now on the planet is the destruction of the old paradigm. Everything that you can look at that's bad, the coercion, the manipulation, whatever you want to call it, the globalists, the deep state, all of that. It's the fall of that paradigm, which isn't serving us as a humanity anymore.
Right. So your son was born first, and then your daughter?
No, I haven't got a daughter yet. She's still in waiting.
Okay. Okay.
But I know why. And look, again, I don't know how quantum or how expanded you want this to get, but I know why my daughter communicated with me for 8 years but never came through yet. And I'll tell you why that is. My mum was diagnosed with terminal cancer in 2021, and that was 4 years after my son was born. And I took her on a massive journey to Mexico. We did alternative treatment. It was at the height of COVID. That's, again, another whole story in itself. But my mum, when she was diagnosed with terminal cancer, it was a Saturday, and we're in the hospital, and they said, "You've got terminal cancer. There's nothing we can do for you." She was in hospital. And my mum looked at me and she said, "I want to live. I want to be on the planet. I want to be here for the Great Awakening, and I want to be here in this body. But if I'm not going to be in this body, I'm going to come back as your daughter." And I didn't give it much weight when she said it. I was like, "Oh, yeah, whatever." It was a Saturday night. I came home to my house. It was 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday night, and there was a knock at the door. And I opened the door, and there was a little girl at the door. She was about 3 years old, 4 maybe. And this really happened a Saturday night. And she says, "Is my Nana Susan here?" My mum's name was Susan, right? And I was like, "No." She's like, "I'm looking for my Nana Susan." And I was like, "Oh, she's not here. Where are your parents?" And she said, "Oh, I don't know. I need my Nana Susan." And I went and knocked on my neighbor's doors, and I took her outside, and there was no one around. So I called the police, and the police took it really seriously. They showed up with a whole van of police officers, and they came out, and my husband came home from work. It was late. And at this point, I was still wondering if I was hallucinating. And I said to my husband, "Can you see them?" And he was like, "Yes." And so they ended up finding this little girl had got out of her house. She was staying with her grandparents. Her grandmother's name coincidentally was Susan. She was staying at her grandparents' place on a Saturday night. She walked 50 minutes on a Saturday night into the direction of my house, and of all the houses, of all the doors she could have knocked on, she knocked on my door and asked for her Nana Susan. What are the chances of that? Now, the universe, to pull out that kind of synchronicity is absolutely extraordinary. So that was the very first inkling I got, where I thought, maybe my mum is going to come back as my daughter. I kind of forgot about it. We went on this journey. We went to Mexico. It looked like she was going to live. My mum recovered from cancer. We extended for another 3 months to give her the best chance to heal. And then all of a sudden she spiraled and she went south, and she got a bladder infection, and she slipped into a coma in our home. And I was nursing her as she was dying, and she was coming in and out of consciousness, in and out of consciousness. And it was a Wednesday morning, and she died. I felt her soul leave her body, and I sat there and I cried. And about 50 seconds later, she came back. But it wasn't her. She opened her eyes and she said to me, "Hello, Mama." And she lived for another 2 weeks. And I nursed her, which I think was the future version of herself, to her death. And she died. And for a period of months, it was my mum that was around, as she was obviously doing the process of ending her life. And then she's now come forth as my daughter. She's come forth energetically to say that she is going to be my daughter, all the signs, the synchronicities, and the messages as my daughter. And this is where it gets really quantum. Because if I was communicating with my daughter for 8 whole years, it means I was communicating with an aspect of my mother's soul while she was still in the physical. She hadn't died yet. And the reason I think that I had to communicate with her for 8 years is because my son is autistic. He is very, very hard work. He's 4.5 years old. He's never slept through the night. We've got lots and lots of challenges for him. There is not a chance on this green earth I would have considered a second child if I hadn't have communicated for 8 whole years and then had all the synchronicities and the spirit baby messages. And while my mum was dying, to come back in and say, "Hello, Mama." All of that had to happen for me to even be remotely open to the possibility of bringing through my daughter, who is now very strongly communicating with me from the spirit baby realm.
That is just incredible. And I was going to ask you about that, if you thought that your daughter's spirit was an aspect of your mother's higher self, maybe.
Absolutely. She absolutely was. But it didn't, like at the time when my son came through and I was like, why on earth would I communicate with my daughter for 8 years for her to not come? Of course, I welcome my son, but I didn't understand it at the time. So that's the other thing here. We don't always get the lesson until much later in hindsight. That lesson came way, way, way down the track. So when I work with women in my one-to-one sessions or doing my courses, it's like, don't get hung up on the gender. Don't get hung up on the soul. Just open up to the communication and the messages and see what comes through for you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Your story is so beautiful on so many levels. And I'm sorry about the loss of your mother.
Well, her soul had its path and had its journey, and it was a very difficult time. But it's really interesting because I've never lost anyone really close to me before. And I don't know if any of your listeners can sort of familiarize themselves with this, but I don't feel any less connected to my mum. I don't feel any less like she's not here. She's still very deeply connected on every level. So for me, it's just shown that death is nothing. It's just a dimension shift. That's it. And when we have access to accessing the different levels of consciousness and dimension, there is no separation.
Right. Have you had communications with her? Well, aside from the fact that she communicates as your daughter?
A little bit after she first died, but not a whole lot. She comes in dreams every once in a while, but I can't connect with her and have a conversation with her like I can with spirit babies. And that's the other definitive thing. People think that if you can communicate with spirit babies, you can communicate with the dead, but my skill set doesn't work that way. My skill set is completely open to communicating with those coming in. I don't so much have an access to those who have left the physical world.
If there was one thing that the spirit babies coming in would want us to know as parents, what would that be?
It would be to live the life that you love. So many people, especially those on the long fertility journey, they give up joy in the attempt to conceive a baby, but what they're actually doing is pushing their baby further away. So it's really live the life that you love, do the work that you love, take that holiday that you want to go on, really just be in the now moment, really focus on what you have in your life right now instead of externalizing and this is going to fix me, that's going to fix me, it's just be and enjoy your life, have fun.
I love that. Is there anything that we can do to support them when they come in? Because I think of myself as a young parent and just being so unconscious, having to wake up so quickly, making mistakes. I know all parents make mistakes, but is there anything that we can do to support them in the work that they've come here to do?
Yeah, there is. And that's to really give up people pleasing for starters and really lean into your own intuition and your own knowing. And I'll give you an example just because it's an easy one. And again, I have no judgment around what your choice is. But let's say that you don't want to vaccinate your child, to give you an example. And it's a deep intuitive knowing inside of you, but everyone else is telling you that you have to because it's what you need to do. But you have this deep intuitive knowing. Your baby is counting on you to follow your own deepest knowing, regardless of what anyone else or the outside noise is telling you. And, it can go down to everything. How do you want to give birth? For some women, they feel safest having a planned cesarean. And for other women, it's at home free birthing. How do you feel the safest? What is your all-knowing highest self telling you? And lean into that. Your babies are counting on you to lean into your own intuition rather than externalizing what you should do.
I love that. Are you comfortable talking about your life with your son now, or is that more
Yeah,
private?
of course. No, of course. And it's a very tricky territory to navigate simply because I want to be mindful of my experience and I want to be authentic of my experience, but I also don't want to be negative and doomsday or whatever. But my son is very, very, very hard work. He's never slept through the night. I can't put him in daycare because of his behavior. He's too destructive. He's 4.5. I've been told he can't go to school at this point. He's highly, highly, highly intelligent, highly gifted, and he's just got energy to burn. Every window in my house has to be bolted shut. Every door has a combination lock on it. The fridge has a lock. Every cupboard, every drawer has a lock. If I want to make a cup of tea, I have to open the lock, get the milk out. And if I don't lock in between putting milk in, putting milk back, he runs off with the jam, the Vegemite. He takes things in the backyard. Like, he's got this sensory grabby. If I take him to a coffee shop, he knocks everything over. He knocks people's plates off. He, trips people over in the street. He's got this, next level intensity. But on the flip side of that, he's a very, 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 very smart boy. So he's on the planet to do something extraordinary, but it's just helping him get there. And there's going to be a lot of this with these New Earth children. And I'll tell you why. They're not wired for the 3D reality. They're wired for the New Earth. So we just have to support them to help them get there until humanity makes the collective shift. And there are a lot of therapies and a lot of treatments that are supporting these kids. There's pioneering brain experts that are coming out with all kinds of things. We don't have to medicate these children. We just have to understand their brain and how their brain works and give them the tools so that they can integrate into this reality.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It really resonates deeply for me. I think that we have seen an increase in the number of children or people that are neurodivergent, for lack of a better word, or whatever the accepted word is now. And I've always strongly believed that that is so connected to spiritual intelligence and higher spiritual connection and abilities, and that it's just different parts of the brain or the intuition that they're really strong in.
Oh my God, they're so strong. And there's a lot of dogma. Again, I want to use the word dogma, even in the conscious community. Like, people say, oh, well, it's vaccines that cause autism. Well, I can tell you, my son's never had a vaccine. My son has had organic food since birth. We use eco products in our house. We have organic pillows. We've got EMF frequency blockers. We've got all of that. I've got all of that covered. It's not just vaccines that do this. There are other factors that are coming into play. And a big part of it is, people say, well, why the rise in autism? It's all the toxins in the food. It's all the toxins. Yes, that plays a part, but also it's the expansion of consciousness that's happening on the planet right now. And these kids process information at a speed you cannot even fathom. It's their processing ability. And, they're getting labeled ADHD and all these things, and they just want to medicate them and shut that down. It's the worst thing we can do for our children. Now, if you need to medicate your kid because you want to stab them and commit suicide, then you have to do what you have to do to help you get through the period. However, they don't change to us. We need to change to accommodate them. It's the other way around.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Belle, I would love to give you a chance to share with the viewers where they can find you.
Yeah, of course. So if you are interested in communicating with your spirit baby, I want to say this. All of my courses and everything that I have created is to teach you how to communicate with your spirit baby. And whilst I do offer one-to-one sessions, if you need a little bit of support, if you want to learn, if you've got a spirit baby, if you want to start yourself on the journey, I do offer one-to-one sessions. However, my primary intention is to teach you how to open that doorway and communicate with your own baby, because I want to cut out the middleman. I want you to lean into your own intuition. So you can book a one-to-one session if you want to on my website, which is surfthewildwoman.com. Or if you do want to buy a program and learn how to communicate with your spirit baby, you can go to my website, quantumstarbabies.com. Or if you want some free resources, I have an app on the App Store, both Apple and Android, and the app is called Star Babies.
Wonderful. I'll have those links in the show notes so people can check them out. Belle, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure hearing your story and connecting with you.
Thank you for having me. And if you've listened to this whole story, thank you for witnessing me in my journey. And if you are calling in your baby, I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that your baby has led you to this episode and that you are being prepared to bring in the vibration of this soul that's going to help uplift the planet for the well-being of all.
Thank you for watching and listening. Your views, likes, comments, and shares truly make the biggest difference in supporting this channel. Don't forget to check the show notes for all the links to today's guest, as well as my links. You'll find me on social media at Love Covered Life, my website, lovecoveredlife.com, and the Be a Guest link for anybody who would like to be a guest on the channel. I have great news. Love Covered Life podcast is coming available on audio podcast. You can find it wherever you listen to your audio podcasts.